8-foot alien queen mocked the idea of breeding with a human until she got pregnant. HFY sci-fi story. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. Lieutenant Mason Hale tasted metal in the back of his throat as the emergency pod slammed through the toxic cloud layer. Sparks danced across the cracked control panel, the hull groaning like something alive as atmospheric friction burned orange streaks over the windows. His altimeter spun uselessly. Plasma interference scrambled everything that wasn't held together with duct tape and optimism. A burst of static cracked in his ear. Then silence. He muttered a low curse under his breath, gripping the straps tight as the pod punched through another turbulent pocket and dropped like a stone. At 2,000 feet, the retros fired late but violently, jerking his spine and yanking a grunt from his chest. The pod hit ground hard enough to blur his vision. Dust and shimmering golden spores erupted around the crater, drifting in slow, hypnotic swirls that clung to the cracked window like living things. Mason shoved the hatch open and staggered into the heat. The air was thick, too warm, too fragrant, humming with a low electrical charge that crawled across his skin. His biosuit flickered warnings. Airborne pheromone concentration elevated. Unknown class. No kidding. His heartbeat kicked up. He wiped sweat from his neck, though it wasn't even that hot. 40 yards away, basalt spires rose from the ground like black teeth, glowing faintly with amber veins pulsing beneath the rock. Strange, rhythmic tremors rolled through the soil, slow, deliberate, almost like footsteps. Big ones. Mason swallowed and checked the small diagnostic tablet clipped to his wrist. The readings made no sense. Hormonal signatures off the charts. Neuroreactive spores. A biofield strong enough to interfere with human equipment. Whatever lived here wasn't small, wasn't subtle, and probably wasn't friendly. Great, he muttered. Crash in the middle of someone's mating grounds. Perfect timing, Hale. A shadow swept across him. The temperature dipped. He turned slowly and froze. She stood at least 8 feet tall, her silhouette outlined by glowing amber dust. Skin like molten gold shifting under the light. Eyes sharp and predatory. Her hair a cascade of metallic strands that swayed like liquid metal. Armor unlike any human alloy wrapped her form. Organic plates that flexed with muscle beneath. A queen. Even before she spoke, he felt it in the air. Authority, gravity, the weight of an entire species in her posture. Her voice cut through the heat, low and resonant. A human male. She almost laughed. Almost. And during our cycle, no less. Your species has strange timing. Mason raised both hands slowly, trying not to breathe too deeply. The pheromones were getting stronger. Lieutenant Mason Hale. Not here willingly. Just trying to not die today. Her golden eyes narrowed, sliding over him in cool assessment. Then she laughed, an amused, dismissive sound that vibrated in his sternum. You think yourself suitable to walk in my territory? Humans are small, fragile, inefficient, surely not built for breeding. Mason blinked. Bree, excuse me? She stepped closer, and the ground trembled beneath her weight. The pheromone haze thickened, clinging to his suit, to his skin, to his breath. His pulse hammered against his ribs. She inhaled and paused. A shift occurred, subtle but unmistakable. Interest. Scientific curiosity? She tilted her head. Strange, she murmured. You are still standing. He had no idea what that meant, but the way her pupils expanded sent a cold line down his spine. Another tremor rolled beneath them, stronger this time. The queen's expression sharpened. It appears, little human, she said softly. You've arrived in the middle of a biological storm you cannot comprehend. Mason steadied his breath, heart pounding. He had no weapon, no backup, no exit strategy. Only a giant alien queen who, based on the pheromone saturation alone, was very much not amused by his presence. Or maybe a little too amused. And for the first time since crashing, he realized something even more terrifying than dying here. She wasn't done with him yet. Lieutenant Mason Hale stood as still as his shaking legs allowed, while the 8-foot-tall alien queen circled him with the slow, deliberate poise of a predator deciding whether her prey was interesting enough to keep alive. The amber pheromone haze clung to his suit like warm static, crawling across the material and sinking through the damaged seams. His heart hammered harder with every breath, each inhale tinged with that heavy golden scent. Queen Arka'Vel stopped in front of him, her molten gold skin glowing under the drifting spores. Her eyes, sharp and leonine, narrowed with a strange mixture of irritation and curiosity. "Explain yourself, human. Why does your body not collapse under my cycle field?" Mason forced his voice steady. "I am a biosystems engineer. I have trained around volatile hormone environments. Maybe my suit is helping." It was a lie. The suit was flickering with warning lights, barely holding on. Her gaze dipped to the blinking diagnostics on his wrist. She clearly did not buy it. Human males are not designed for intensity. Your species barely measures above baseline strength. She stepped closer. The temperature shifted, like the air bowed toward her presence. "Yet you are standing. Even my warriors do not remain this composed." "You call this composed?" Mason muttered. "I feel like I ran a marathon straight uphill." A sound escaped her, something halfway between amusement and disbelief. "You speak boldly for a creature who cannot outrun my shadow." She reached out. Mason froze. Her hand, large and claw-tipped, brushed along the left shoulder of his suit. The contact sent a sharp vibration through the material, as though his suit was reacting to her biofield. "Your technology is primitive," she murmured, examining the scorched metal. "But your biology, something in it resonates. Human males are fertile at all times, are they not?" Mason nearly choked. That is not really a conversation topic during a crash landing. Her pupils expanded slightly, the golden glow inside them intensifying. "It is relevant. Your scent was faint when you emerged from the wreck. Now it distorts my cycle field. That should not be possible." Mason swallowed hard. "If I am causing a problem, I can back away." She laughed softly. "If you move without my permission, my guards will spear you to the ground before you take 2 steps. As if on cue, 2 towering Velari warriors emerged from the spores, their armor humming. Mason raised his hand slightly. "Great. An audience." Arka'Vel lifted one finger, and the guards halted instantly. "Leave us," she commanded. They vanished back into the haze without a sound. The queen looked at Mason again, her expression tightening with something he could not decipher. "Your presence disrupts my biology and my instincts." Mason swallowed the rising anxiety. "Is that dangerous? For you? Potentially. For me? Unacceptable." She paced once, then stopped before him again. "I mocked your species earlier. Humans are small, soft, unfit for pairing. But my body is reacting to you as though you are a viable match." Mason blinked. "That is definitely a misunderstanding." "Perhaps," she said, but her tone suggested she was not confident at all. A sudden tremor shuddered through the ground. The amber spores shook loose from the basalt spires and cascaded downward in shimmering streams. Arka'Vel stiffened. "The biological storm is starting." "Storm?" Mason asked. "Your arrival was inconvenient," she said, "but this is catastrophic timing. My people undergo a pheromone surge every few cycles. It amplifies instinct, strength, aggression." Her eyes locked onto his. "An attraction." Mason's pulse roared in his ears. Another tremor struck, stronger than before, rattling stones at their feet. The pheromone density spiked so sharply that Mason staggered. His respirator alarm shrieked. Arka'Vel caught his arm before he fell, her grip hot and impossibly strong. "Do not breathe too deeply, human. My cycle storm is dangerous to your kind." "Noted," he said through clenched teeth. Her closeness hit him harder than the tremors. Her scent was intense now, molten and electric. Her voice dropped, low and resonant. "Stay close. If you wander, the storm will tear you apart." Mason steadied himself, forcing his heartbeat down. "You do not even like humans." "I do not," she agreed. "But my biology seems to disagree." Another tremor hit. Her hand tightened on his arm. "Move, human. We must reach shelter before the storm peaks. And for reasons beyond reason, my body refuses to let you out of my sight." Queen Arka'Vel pulled Mason through the thickening amber haze with a grip that felt far too strong for someone who claimed humans were fragile and each tremor beneath their feet rolled like a living heartbeat rising from the ground itself. The air grew heavier, hotter, shimmering with golden particles that clung to Mason's skin even through the damaged patches of his suit. His visor flickered warnings nonstop. Pheromone saturation critical. Respiratory regulation failing. Neural interference detected. Arka'Vel glanced back, her molten gold eyes narrowing as she watched his steps falter. "Your body is not built for this storm, human," she said, her voice rougher than before, vibrating with the same charge surging through the air. "If you collapse, I cannot guarantee the storm will spare you." Mason forced a breath, tasting heat and metal. "I am trying not to collapse, Your Majesty, but your air feels like I am breathing through a furnace." She let out a frustrated sound, something between a growl and a hiss. "Your species is too sensitive, and yet you irritate my instincts beyond reason. Glad to be a biological inconvenience," Mason muttered. She did not laugh this time. Another tremor rolled beneath them, stronger, almost knocking Mason off balance. Arka'Vel caught him by the forearm, her claws grazing the fabric but never piercing. Her touch burned, like his skin recognized something it should not. She looked down at his arm, frowning as if his reaction startled her. "Your pulse is accelerating." "No kidding," Mason said. "The ground is trying to shake me into the next century." "Not from fear," she corrected quietly. "From me." Mason opened his mouth to argue, but another violent tremor interrupted. The spires ahead pulsed, glowing brighter as the biological storm surged. Arka'Vel exhaled sharply. "We do not have time. You will stay close to me. No wandering. No foolish self-sacrifice." "I am a biosystems engineer, not a hero," Mason said. "Good," she said. "Heroes die first." She led him toward a narrow ravine between basalt walls where the spores swirled less violently. The temperature was still high, but the air felt marginally breathable. Mason leaned a hand against the cooler rock, trying to steady his vision as his sensors struggled to compensate. Arka'Vel observed him, her expression shifting from annoyance to something that looked dangerously close to contemplation. "Your biology continues to baffle me," she murmured. "You should be unconscious. Yet your body adapts. Maybe humans are just stubborn." She stepped closer, her towering silhouette eclipsing the glow. The pheromone haze rippled around her like a golden aura. She studied him as though reading hidden carvings beneath his skin. "Stubbornness does not explain why my cycle field reacts to you specifically. It should repel you or overwhelm you. Instead," her gaze sharpened. "Instead it draws you in." Mason shook his head. "Believe me, I am trying very hard not to be drawn anywhere." She ignored the comment, lifting a clawed hand to hover near his chest, not quite touching. His breath caught anyway. A heat he never asked for rushed through him, like electricity meeting dry tinder. She stared at the reactions shivering down his arms, and said, "There. That is the response I cannot explain." Mason tried to take a step back, but the moment he shifted, another tremor hit. This one so powerful the ravine walls vibrated like struck tuning forks. Arka'Vel grabbed his shoulders, stabilizing him with ease. Her breath washed over his face, warm and sharp with pheromone. "Do not move away from me during a cycle spike," she warned. "The storm could imprint you unintentionally." "Imprint?" Mason echoed. "It is a biological bond," she said reluctantly. "It happens when a Velari's instincts choose a mate during the height of a storm." Mason froze completely. "I want to make it clear that I am not volunteering for anything." Her grip tightened, and for the first time, she looked genuinely conflicted. "Neither am I," she said. "But biology does not care for our preferences." Before Mason could respond, a distant roar echoed through the storm, a low thunderous vibration that made the spires tremble. Arka'Vel's expression darkened. "The storm is waking other creatures. We must reach the inner chamber. Stay behind me and do exactly as I say." She pulled him deeper into the ravine as the golden haze intensified, the storm peaking around them like a living force. And Mason realized something he did not want to admit out loud. The closer he stayed to her, the easier it was to breathe, as if her presence shielded him from the worst of the storm. And Arka'Vel noticed it too. "It is impossible," she whispered, almost to herself. "But the storm accepts you." Queen Arka'Vel pushed forward through the ravine with powerful, deliberate strides, her molten gold silhouette cutting through the swirling haze as the biological storm intensified around them. Mason stayed close behind her, every instinct screaming that distance meant death, because the air beyond her immediate presence felt like molten sandpaper scraping the inside of his lungs. The amber spores thickened into glittering currents that twisted in the air like living threads, swirling toward the queen as though magnetized by her cycle field. Mason could feel the pull on his skin too, a prickling static that crawled under the collar of his suit. His respirator wheezed in protest. The storm was pushing him to the edge of consciousness. Arka'Vel glanced back, eyes narrowing at the stuttering rise of his chest. "Your breathing is deteriorating," she said. "Stabilize it, or the storm will infiltrate your bloodstream." Mason tried to force a steady inhale, but the air tasted like metal and fire. "I am trying," he rasped. "Your planet is trying to cook me alive." A faint flicker crossed her expression, something almost like frustration laced with concern. "Then stay closer." She grabbed his wrist, pulling him with a strength that did not feel aggressive this time, but necessary, like someone anchoring another against a rising tide. Her skin radiated heat, and his body responded instinctively to the contact with a sharp spike in his pulse. Arka'Vel noticed it, of course. Her eyes narrowed, her pupils expanding. "Your body reacts as if it recognizes me," she murmured. "This should not be possible. No human should harmonize with Velari cycle fields." Mason struggled to keep his footing as another tremor shook the ravine. "Maybe I am just unlucky." "No," she said, voice low. "This is not luck." The ground rumbled behind them, a deep, rolling roar that made the rock walls vibrate. Arka'Vel stiffened. "Move now, human." She dragged him forward as another roar echoed, this one closer and sharper, like stone cracking under impossible weight. Mason looked back. For an instant he saw shapes shifting in the haze, tall and angular, moving with unnatural precision. "What is that?" he asked. "Storm harvesters," she said. "Creatures drawn to the pheromone surge. They hunt anything that disrupts the cycle field." Mason's stomach dropped. "I am definitely disrupting everything." "Yes," she said, "which is why they will come for you first. Keep moving." They ran deeper into the ravine until the walls opened into a wide chamber of jagged basalt pillars. Amber spores drifted upward from vents in the ground like glowing steam. Arka'Vel pushed him toward a narrow crevice between two spires. "Inside," she ordered. "This is the only place shielded from the surge." Mason squeezed in, the cool stone pressing against his suit. Arka'Vel followed, her towering frame moving with unexpected grace. The moment she stepped inside, the storm outside surged violently, the air roaring like a furnace. The spores hammered against the invisible barrier around the crevice, unable to enter. Mason sagged against the wall, relief washing over him as his breathing steadied. Arka'Vel watched him with intense, unblinking focus. "Your biology puzzles me more with every moment," she said quietly. Mason managed a weak laugh. "I get that a lot." She did not smile. Her golden gaze drifted across the storm beyond the crevice, the glow reflecting in her eyes. "The storm should reject you. It should overwhelm you the moment you step into it. Yet it shifts around you instead, like a current redirected." Mason frowned. "Maybe my suit is interfering with whatever energy you release." She shook her head slowly. "Your suit is failing. I can hear it. The cycle field is responding to you directly." She stepped closer, so close he could feel her heat, even through the failing fabric. Her voice dropped to a hush. "It is reacting as though you are compatible." Mason felt his pulse stutter. Compatible for what? She held his gaze, her expression unreadable. "For bonding." Mason went completely still. "I did not sign up for bonding." "I did not choose this either," she replied. "But the storm does not obey intention. It obeys instinct." Another roar shook the chamber, closer than before, making dust cascade from the rocks above. Arka'Vel's posture shifted, protective and tense. "The harvesters have found our trail. They will not enter during the peak surge, but they will wait." Mason swallowed. "Wait for what?" "For the storm to force a decision," she said softly. "A Velari queen does not survive a peak cycle without anchoring her biology. And the storm has chosen you as the anchor." Mason stared at her, heart pounding. "And if I say no?" She looked away from him, her jaw tightening. "Then you die when the storm reaches its apex. And I die shortly after." Silence pressed between them, heavy and electric. Arka'Vel finally turned back to him, eyes bright and conflicted. "Human, The storm has already begun to bind your presence to mine. Whether either of us approves no longer matters. Another roar. Another tremor. The spores outside glowed brighter, like a living heartbeat pulsing at the chamber's walls. Arka'Vel stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. The storm has chosen, and now it will not release us until the cycle completes. The chamber vibrated with a low, rhythmic hum as the storm outside built toward its peak, the golden haze pulsing like a living heartbeat pressing against the narrow crevice where Mason stood inches from Queen Arka'Vel. Heat rolled through the air in thick waves, wrapping around him until every breath felt heavy, charged, and strangely synchronized with the towering alien queen whose presence dominated the space. The barrier shimmered as the storm tried to force its way inside, golden tendrils of pheromone-laden air scraping along the invisible wall, each impact sending faint sparks of light across the stone. Arka'Vel watched the barrier with a fierce, measured focus, her molten features sharp in the glowing stormlight. "The peak surge is beginning," she said, her voice roughened by the pressure building in the air. "Resonance must stabilize now, or the storm will break through." Mason wiped sweat from his forehead, heat crawling down his spine in relentless spirals. "I do not fully understand what stabilizing resonance means, Your Majesty." She turned her gaze toward him, and for an instant he felt pinned in place by the weight of her attention. "It means your body must remain close to mine. Your presence strengthens the barrier. The storm interprets this proximity as acceptance." Mason felt his pulse stutter, not from fear this time, but from the strange, electric awareness that filled the narrow space between them. "And if the storm thinks we are not accepting it?" he asked. Arka'Vel's expression tightened. "Then the cycle field destabilizes, and the harvesters waiting outside tear through both of us." Mason exhaled slowly. No pressure at all. She stepped closer, and the chamber seemed to shrink around them. Golden spores rippled along the invisible barrier in reaction to her movement. Her skin glowed brighter as the storm resonated through her, casting molten light across his face. "Human," she said quietly, "your heart rate is accelerating again." "That is because you are standing very close," Mason replied. "Your size and glow are kind of hard to ignore." Arka'Vel tilted her head slightly, as if examining a specimen with unexpected behavior. "My size and glow have never caused a human to sync with a cycle field before. Your reactions defy every biological record." Mason felt another wave of heat ripple through him, the air buzzing against his skin like a static charge. "Maybe my biology is just weird." "Weirdness does not create resonance," she said. "Compatibility does." The word hung in the air, electric. Another roar echoed from outside, and the barrier flickered dangerously. Arka'Vel reacted instantly, closing the last inches between them and placing one clawed hand against the wall beside his head, her body forming a shield between him and the storm. The barrier stabilized the moment she touched him, glowing brighter as though fed by their shared proximity. She inhaled slowly, her breath warm against his skin. "Your presence calms the storm." "I do not feel calm," Mason admitted. "Calm is irrelevant. Resonance is what matters." The storm clawed at the barrier again, sending a violent tremor through the chamber. Stone fragments shook loose from the ceiling. Arka'Vel pressed closer, her armor brushing against his suit with a heat that felt almost alive. "Do not move," she murmured. "Your heartbeat is aligning with mine." Mason swallowed, unsure if it was the storm or something else tightening his chest. "And that is good. It is required," she said. "The storm senses hesitation. It demands certainty." Mason steadied himself, forcing his breath to match the slow, controlled rhythm she seemed to emanate. The air shifted instantly, golden particles swirling in patterns that mirrored their synchronized breathing. Arka'Vel felt it too. Her eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her unshakable composure. "It is working," she whispered. "The storm is accepting the resonance." Outside, the roars grew distant, as if the harvesters sensed the shift. The golden haze thickened, not with hostility now, but with a strange, pulsing warmth that wrapped around them like a cocoon. Arka'Vel's gaze lingered on him, conflicted. "Human, understand this. I did not choose this resonance. But now that it has begun, the storm will not release us until the cycle completes." Mason's heart pounded in perfect rhythm with the storm. With her, with the strange force binding them together against every intention. Then what happens next? Arka'Vel closed her eyes for a brief moment, her voice quiet and trembling with a truth neither of them expected. Next, the storm reveals what it truly wants from us. The storm outside the chamber rose into a deep, rolling crescendo that made the stone beneath Mason's boots vibrate like the surface of a drum, each tremor shaking loose dust and glowing spores from the ceiling, while Queen Arka'Vel stood before him, her towering frame illuminated by the pulsing golden light that followed the storm's rhythm. The narrow crevice felt smaller than ever, filled with heat, scent, and the electric sensation that their bodies were being pulled toward a single, inevitable point. Arka'Vel's breathing had grown heavier, deeper, her chest rising with each inhale as the cycle field wrapped tighter around her. The molten patterns on her skin brightened in response, glowing like living veins of gold. She watched Mason with an intensity that made his pulse race. "Human, listen carefully," she said, her voice roughened by the storm's pressure. "The peak is moments away. If resonance does not complete before the next surge, the barrier will fail." Mason swallowed hard, his throat tight. "You keep saying complete. You still have not told me what that means." She hesitated, and that hesitation was more frightening than the storm itself. Her jaw tightened as she forced the words out. "The storm requires a bond. Without it, both of our bodies will be torn apart by the conflicting cycle signatures." Mason's stomach dropped. "I do not think I am built for alien bonding rituals." "Neither did I," she said quietly. "Yet here we are." A violent shockwave slammed into the barrier, sending a flare of golden light cascading across the chamber. Mason stumbled forward, and Arka'Vel caught him by the shoulders, her claws curling but never breaking the skin. The heat of her touch shot through him like a jolt of electricity, and the storm reacted instantly, swirling around them in tighter, faster currents. "Your body responds to me," she murmured, her voice trembling with something she was fighting to contain. "The storm senses it." Mason tried to pull back enough to think, but the storm punished the distance. The barrier flickered sharply, and a crackle of energy sliced across his arm like a warning. Arka'Vel yanked him closer until his chest pressed against the cool plates of her armor. "Do not pull away," she warned. "The storm interprets distance as refusal." "I am not refusing," Mason said, breathless. "I am panicking." "Then panic closer." Her hand slid from his shoulder to the back of his neck, steadying him as the storm clawed at the walls. "You must remain in contact. The storm has already marked you as my chosen match." Mason's heart hammered. "Chosen? I thought you said you did not choose anything." "I did not," she said, golden eyes locking onto his. "But the cycle did." Another tremor shook the ground, nearly knocking them both off their feet. The harvesters outside roared again, sensing the barrier thinning. Arka'Vel's grip tightened protectively. "Human, do not fear them. They cannot break through if we stabilize the resonance." "And how do we do that?" he asked. She lowered her forehead to his, a gesture so unexpected that Mason forgot to breathe. Her skin radiated shimmering heat, and when their foreheads touched, the storm exploded in brilliant golden spirals that illuminated the chamber. "By anchoring," she whispered. Mason felt the shift instantly. His pulse synced with hers, the rhythm aligning in a way that felt unnatural and inevitable at the same time. His breathing matched the slow, powerful rise and fall of her chest. The air between them vibrated with shared heat, shared presence, shared instinct shaped by forces neither fully understood. "This is resonance," Arka'Vel said softly, her voice trembling. "The storm is binding our cycle fields. It has accepted you." Outside, the roars died away, replaced by a low hum of submission as the harvesters retreated. The storm light pulsed brighter, wrapping around Mason and the Queen in a golden cocoon. Mason felt the pressure ease from his lungs, the heat settling into something steady and warm instead of overwhelming. "It is working," he whispered. "It is stabilizing." Arka'Vel exhaled, relief flickering across her molten features. "Yes, but it is not finished." The storm gathered around them again, not with hostility now, but with purpose, circling them like a living force. Arka'Vel's voice dropped to a whisper filled with dread and acceptance. "The storm will seal the bond with the next surge, and when it does, my body will respond. The resonance will trigger the cycle's conclusion." Mason's pulse stuttered. What does that mean? Her golden eyes softened with something that looked almost human. It means, human, that the storm intends for you to become the father of the next Velari heir. The chamber fell into a stunned, trembling quiet as the last echoes of the storm faded into the distance, leaving only the faint shimmer of golden dust settling through the air like falling embers. Mason stood frozen, his hand still resting against the warm plates of Queen Arka'Vel's armor as her words settled over him with the weight of an entire world. My body carries its consequence. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence inside the crevice felt impossibly loud, broken only by their synchronized breathing, a rhythm that lingered even after the storm had withdrawn its influence. Arka'Vel's eyes, bright as molten metal, shifted downward to her abdomen, where faint golden light pulsed beneath the armor, a subtle but unmistakable change. Mason felt his chest tighten. Is it certain? He asked, his voice low. She nodded once, slowly, as if the motion itself carried gravity. Velari cycles do not fail. When the storm seals a resonance, conception is absolute. Mason exhaled shakily, trying to process the impossible truth. He had crash-landed on a hostile planet, survived a biological storm, and now stood bonded to an alien queen carrying a child that was half human and half something beyond his understanding. This was never your choosing, Arka'Vel said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it, a rare vulnerability cracking through the authority she wore like armor. The storm forced your path to cross mine. It demanded what neither of us would have chosen. Mason met her gaze, surprised to see guilt. Real, heavy guilt. In the eyes of someone who commanded empires. I do not blame you, he said. You saved my life more than once. She blinked, startled by the sincerity. And now I am bound to yours, she murmured. She stepped past him, approaching the entrance as the barrier dissolved into harmless air. Outside, the ravine lay transformed. The golden haze had settled like morning fog. The spires glowed with a muted, gentle pulse, and the harvesters that had stalked them had vanished into the distance with the storm's end. Arka'Vel stood tall at the threshold, the wind catching the metallic strands of her hair. Mason stepped beside her. She did not stop him. She looked over the storm-scarred landscape, then spoke with a voice that carried both resignation and fierce resolve. When we return to my people, there will be consequences. Velari lineage is sacred. A queen's heir decides the future of entire star systems. And now, she paused, golden eyes flicking toward him. Now that heir is ours. Mason felt the weight of her words, but not with fear. Something steadier rose in him, an unexpected sense of responsibility. He had never asked for this, but now that it existed, he could not imagine walking away. What happens when we reach your capital? He asked. They will demand explanation, she said. Some will reject you. Others will fear you. A few may try to remove you. Remove me? Mason repeated, raising an eyebrow. Like, politely ask me to leave. Or something sharper. Sharper, she answered plainly. But they will fail. She finally turned to him, her expression unreadable in the golden light. Because I am their queen, and you are the father of my heir. No one will touch you while I live. Mason stared at her, realizing that beneath her immense power, beneath the intimidating height and armor and instinct, she was speaking a promise, a real one. So what am I now? He asked quietly, half afraid of the answer. Arka'Vel stepped closer, the air warming between them again, though the storm no longer commanded it. She studied him with the unwavering intensity of someone seeing a truth for the first time. You are the anomaly the storm chose, she said. The human who survived what no Velari warrior could. Her hand brushed briefly against his arm, not commanded by instinct now, but choice. And you are the one who will walk beside me when we return home. Mason swallowed, surprise softening into something steadier. Then I guess I had better get used to royal politics. Arka'Vel let out a breath that might have been a laugh, the faintest curve touching her lips. You will. The galaxy will speak of this cycle for generations. She stepped forward, her silhouette framed by the glowing spires and settling dust, then looked back at him one last time, her voice steady and quiet. Come, human. The storm has ended. And now our future begins. The wind stirred the golden haze as Mason followed her out of the chamber, the alien sky opening above them, vast and bright. carrying the weight of a destiny neither had expected, but both would now have to face together.